Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Great America Show. It's great to have you with us. Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz this week, not denying that the federal government sent confidential human sources in the crowd during the Capitol riots on January 6th of 2021. Horowitz was testifying on Capitol Hill Wednesday morning before the House Select Subcommittee on Weaponization of the Federal Government. The hearing was set to focus on how the FBI used its security clearance adjudication process to purge its ranks of conservatives and whistleblowers and punish those with views contrary to the leadership of the FBI. Take a listen to Congressman Thomas Massey's exchange with the Inspector General as those government informants were clearly in the crowd during January 6th, according to Horowitz.
Do you have evidence of the number of confidential human sources that were operating on the Capitol grounds on January 6th?
Our report will include the information in that regard.
Can you tell us today how many there were? Were there more than 100?
I'm not in a position to say that, both because it's in draft form and we have not gone through the classification review. And so I need to be careful on what I say.
So we're 4 years in. The reason to do these reports, I think, is so we don't make this, if there were any mistakes, not to make the same mistakes again. But we are just weeks away from the inauguration. We're 4 years, almost 4 years into this report. When is it going to be released?
It's certainly my hope and expectation, although I don't control this entirely because it has to go through a classification review, but certainly in the next couple of months is my hope.
Do you think, is there any consideration for the election about the release of this report? Would you delay it in order to not release it right before the election?
At this point, given the process that has to play out in terms of classification review and all of that, I'm not making any, I don't have to make any judgment about that. We're still, that still has to go on. Just to give you a sense of it, when I did the Pfizer review,
you're saying it's not even going to be done in time for before the election?
It doesn't, I doubt it would be done in time for the election.
Is it going to be done before the inauguration?
That is certainly my hope.
It's your hope. We're 4 years into it, and we know what we do know is you're going to expose that there were confidential human sources at the Capitol. Can you tell us today how many went into the Capitol?
I'll have that information in the report. I'm not able to speak to information in there, both because it's in draft and we get a response from the department and the FBI, okay, but also because I don't know yet what's classified and not classified.
Congressman Thomas Massey asking all the right questions to hold this government accountable for all the bad they've done to January 6th political hostages and many other Americans affected by it. We all suspected there were government actors there on January 6th. It's now confirmed. Over in the Middle East, things aren't going much better. Israel has ramped up its war on Hezbollah, and the Pentagon has announced we're now deploying troops to the Middle East to support. To take all this up and much more, our guest today is Tony Shaffer. He's a retired Pentagon intel operative. Tony, it's great to have you here on the Great America Show. Thanks so much for joining us. President Biden at the United Nations this week causing a traffic jam in New York for all New Yorkers. I don't even know why he went. He should have called in from Zoom. Maybe they could have got verbiage of what he was saying because nobody really understands what the man says. And I'm not saying begrudgingly. It's sad that's who's leading our country right now, the leader of the free world. Take a listen. He talks about Afghanistan, and he says he stands by that withdrawal. Still hasn't mentioned the name of those 13 U.S. service members who were so tragically killed, accused President Trump of using their tombstones as a campaign device, but still hasn't mentioned the names of these people. But he says he stands by it. Take a listen.
We need to end the era of war that began on 9/11. As Vice President to President Obama, he asked me to work to wind down the military operations in Iraq, and we did, painful as it was. When I came to office as president, Afghanistan had replaced Vietnam as America's longest war. I was determined to end it, and I did. It was a hard decision, but the right decision. 4 American presidents had faced that decision, but I was determined not to leave it to the 5th. It was a decision accompanied by tragedy. 13 brave Americans lost their lives, along with hundreds of Afghans in a suicide bomb. I think those lost lives, I think of them every day. I think of all the 2,461 U.S. military deaths over a long 20 years of that war. 20,744 American servicemen wounded in action. I think of their service, their sacrifice and their heroism. I know other countries lost their own men and women fighting alongside us. We honor their sacrifices as well.
So there's two things there. Nobody believes that he thinks about them every day because nobody really knows what Joe Biden believes. He definitely doesn't because he wouldn't have done it that way. And there's also no disputing, Tony, that it was the right move to pull out of Afghanistan, right? But not the way he went about doing it so fast, so rapidly. Your thoughts on it, on Biden's comments and the overall withdrawal?
Yeah, first off, it's embarrassing to have him speak pidgin English that people can barely understand. It's just not a good look. And when you actually listen to the words, it's like he doesn't really speak to anything relating to the reality in which we live. He does not think of the men and women every day. It's just not, he doesn't. He's not that kind of guy. He's not a Ronald Reagan. He has no core beliefs. He's essentially a straw man that's been created to function as he is, a guy who actually is the pass-through for Democrat policies, which I think are really Barack Obama's policies, given to him by Valerie Jarrett and Susan Rice. And that's the first thing. Second factor, as you said, I worked with Mike Pompeo on the Afghan withdrawal plan. Mike and I did not always agree on a lot of points. As a matter of fact, honestly, the last conversation that Mike Pompeo and I had, we were yelling at each other because we disagreed on certain points. With that said, the plan that Mike Pompeo had put together with President Trump was a reconciliation of the Taliban with the Afghan official government. That is the idea. That was it. A reconciliation.
Right.
What Biden did was an abandonment. He didn't reconcile anything. So he abandoned the plan, didn't actually work to see the conditions-based re-insinuation of both organizations together, which was a fundamental failure. The moment you abandon that point, you've lost the plan.
Right.
And therefore, the tragedy and failure was inevitable. And oh, by the way, the person who was last in the room with Joe Biden by her own accord, reinforced several times by public statements, was Kamala Harris. So apparently, one Kamala Harris was just fine with putting her stamp on the failure that became the low water mark that has stayed with the Biden White House ever since. They've always been underwater regarding approval numbers ever since that event.
Yep. Yeah, and you know what? It's funny. We were talking before the show. They actually had to do a poll on it to see who was responsible. 49% of Americans believe she was very or somewhat responsible for the departure of Afghanistan. I mean, that makes absolutely no sense. 49%. What does that mean? The 51% are living under a rock? I mean, did they not speak English? Did they not understand her own words saying she was in the room? The other thing I take issue with is they always, make fun of Trump. Oh, well, you negotiated with the Taliban. They're terrorists.
He did.
Well,
yeah. Well, they were.
Right,
yeah.
He did because he wanted to get Americans out of there safely. And he told the leader, and he tells his story all the time. He told the leader of the Taliban, I think his name was Abdul, is what Trump refers to him as. If one service member is touched, if one American is harmed, as much as a scratch is left on their head, and he showed him a picture of his house, and he says, well, why'd you show me the picture of my own house? And Trump says, you can put two and two together on what I'm going to do to you if one
Exactly.
American. Right. So they constantly parade that Trump negotiated with terrorists, okay? But they're the ones, Tony, who turned over billions of dollars of equipment to the terrorists, the quote terrorists. They're the ones who gave them all of our arsenal. They're the ones who let them take over Afghanistan. So, I mean, does that make any sense to you?
No. We left on the ground the fourth largest conventional army in the world. Think about that. We abandoned all that military gear that the Taliban have now sold and otherwise provided to others. And on that point, we invested over $2 trillion of blood and treasure. Think about that, $2 trillion. Just to say, oh, yeah, the women that we invested in, having them go to school, yeah, no big deal. We don't care. Yeah, all the investment we made in collective security to make sure that Al-Qaeda and the Taliban could not actually regenerate, yeah, we don't care. We left them stronger than before. And yet somehow we're supposed to believe that Trump's the bad guy here? Yeah. Let me say something else along this line. Not only did Biden fund the Taliban, they were paying about $300 a month up until recently. $3 million a month recent, giving the Taliban money for aid, which is insane. And then on top of that, Biden approved upwards of $30 to $40 billion to be released to the greatest state sponsor of terror on the planet, Iran.
Yep.
So I think that's not negotiating with terrorists. That's fueling terrorism, as far as I'm concerned. So that's Biden, not Trump.
Yeah, it's a double standard. I mean, these people talk out of both sides of their mouth, but you know what the problem is, Tony? We have a media that is so corrupt and so complicit in this garbage that these Democrats spew upon us that the American people, I mean, I'm trying to give the American people who believe this stuff the benefit of the doubt because of those people who tune into, and it's not many. I mean, it's in the low millions who tune into MSNBC, who tune into NBC, who tune into CNN and all these radical, leftist news organizations and online publications. It's unbelievable. And Afghanistan ended the same way that it seems most of these ends. The president or the leader gets on a plane with a shit ton of cash, never to be seen again, never to be heard from again, and someone's pockets are lined. And it's not that we shouldn't say this, because when you have people like Hunter Biden who are going over there, lobbying in foreign countries, and then you have his father over there making decisions like that where people are getting this money and then leaving the country, it makes you wonder who's really getting paid. Who's getting kickbacks in this? Who's part of the military-industrial complex? Who's on Lindsey Graham's list of senators who are military-industrial complex folks who reap their benefits and stoke the war? I want to take a quick break here, Tony. On the other side, as we pull out of Afghanistan, we're now sending more people over to the Middle East to fight another senseless war that has nothing to do with America. We're coming right back with Tony Shaffer. Stay with us. Folks, are you tired of supporting big box stores and multi-billion-dollar corporations that don't support us? Corporations that donate tens of millions of dollars a year to push woke Marxist dem ideologies? Whether it be Amazon and Jeff Bezos or Target with their transgender clothing for kids, or even Bud Light going totally woke, enough is enough. Why should we as lovers of this country continue to support these corporations? The answer is we shouldn't. I constantly get people who reach out to me and ask, John, what can we do to save this country? Where can we shop and support American-made brands and conservative ideologies? Well, we now have a solution to stop shopping at these woke companies and stop funding the deep state, and a solution to buy American. This is something we can all do right now to kick the deep state in the teeth and stop funding our enemies and vote with our dollars. We have a parallel economy for around 450 household products. Not only can you cancel woke brands like Procter & Gamble and Johnson & Johnson, you can also cancel the stores that carry them. I need you all to head over to switchwithjohn.com, that's switchwithjohn.com, where you can read all about our movement. We have access to a conservative manufacturer that will replace these brands and the stores you buy them from. It isn't an additional budget item because instead of turning right into Target or left into Walmart, you're going to shop directly online, directly with the manufacturer. Folks, this is a patriot movement that is happening right now before our eyes. Every 47 seconds, a shopper is switching to our online store, and we need you to partner with us. Join us and band together. I just canceled my Amazon Prime subscription because I've truly had enough. So what do you say? It's time to put your money where your heart is? Join us today and help save this nation. Go to switchwithjohn.com. That's switchwithjohn.com to learn how you can join thousands of other patriots and help take this nation back. Switchwithjohn.com. We'll see you there. We're back with Tony Shaffer. Tony, we spoke about Afghanistan. The U.S. is now sending troops to the Middle East as the latest Israel Hezbollah fighting sparks an all-out war. The Pentagon press secretary, Major General Pat Ryder, saying, quote, in light of increased tensions in the Middle East and an outright abundance of caution, we are sending a small number. They're not giving us a number because Americans don't have a right to know, where we're sending our children, our spouses, our brothers, our sisters, right? A small number of additional U.S. military personnel forward to augment our forces that are already in the region. Now it's estimated about 40,000 are already in the region. Why are we sending more people to the Middle East, Tony?
Well, they're not really clear on this, but I can tell you, based on just recent reports, the Truman Carrier Battle Group steamed out of Norfolk just yesterday. Today, when we're talking Tuesday, it was yesterday, Monday. And in that regard, I think they're sending out more special operations troops. And by the way, this circles back, if I can use that term loosely, to Kamala Harris, because Kamala Harris said in the debate with President Trump that we have no forces deployed. Well, gee, I think Pat Ryder just said we're deploying, folks. And right now, at the moment, at the time we're speaking, we have military personnel in 4 different combat zones. They are considered combat zones because there are.
Tony, real quick, when was the last time we had people deploy? When was the last time we deployed people?
Well, we deploy people all the time. I mean,
I'm saying to something like this to handle a conflict.
Oh, so well, the last time we had a major deployment for a war per se was Syria. We actually deployed forces into Syria to augment what we had done regarding Iraq. Remember the Iraq issue? You know, my friend General Joe Dunford, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, under President Trump, by the way, in 2017, used the buy, with, and through strategy to effectively eliminate ISIS. And then to follow that up, we had to go into Syria. That was the last major divide. Oh, by the way, Dunford wanted our forces out of Syria. Trump wanted our forces out of Syria because we had done our job, but they're still there because, you know, reasons. So that's part of the problem with the deep state. They tend to do what they want no matter what they're told to do. And that's one of the things we're witnessing right now.
You know, that we were talking, like I said before, and it's interesting to me, like, you look at Ukraine and Russia. It's a war that Russia, I think most of us expected. We spoke to people, Lou and I, after the first invasion of Ukraine. Yeah. I expected it was going to last days, maybe a week, maybe a month. Now we're years long into it. You have the IDF chief of staff saying they will not give Hezbollah a break from the attacks. October 7th, or coming up on a year now, the attacks on Israel. Most of us, I thought the same thing that we thought in Ukraine, that Israel would go into Gaza, they would clean it out, they would take care of it. Not the case now, coming up on a year.
Right.
They're still there. They still haven't finished the job like they had said they were going to do. Now they're going into Lebanon. I mean, what is the IDF's plan here that, you know, they can't seem to finish the job in Gaza? Now they've got their eyes on another target. Probably looking to America now for more money, and we'll go ahead and send it. But what's their plan?
Oh, the common denominator of both plans is the Biden administration. Look, Zelensky and company had a chance to end the Russia war early on within the first year through a negotiated process, which President Trump will pick back up and do. Right. Same with Israel. The Israelis have been held back. I don't care how you feel about Israel-Palestine. The Israelis could have finished dealing with the Gaza Strip long ago, and they've been held back by the Biden administration over and over, both politically and militarily. So that's a political choice. And unfortunately, I think the Israelis, and I've said this publicly, they should ignore what they're told by the Biden administration. Just go be done with it. Just be done with it. Go win. If you don't do that, you're going to be drawn into this endless war, which is what we're seeing. And it just extenuates the pain and suffering of everybody, both sides. So I'm fundamentally anti-war, believe it or not. Yeah. And the idea here that we've engaged in a long, protracted war in Ukraine, which essentially has become a profit center. Let me add something to the conversation regarding why we're spending the money. You'll remember this. A guy named Sam Bankman-Fried, FTX. FTX and the Democrats and the military-industrial complex all colluded to have Sam Bankman-Fried, who is now in federal prison. Yeah, there's a clue. For money laundering. Well, there's a clue. Why do you think they encourage SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried, to be the bank of choice by Ukraine? Because that money we send over there is distributed back to certain corrupt individuals. And that's why you see these things extended out. It's not about winning anymore. It's about how much money can certain corporations and certain party leaders make. And it's a sad situation.
I want to turn to Ukraine in just a moment, but you mentioned Iran, the largest state sponsor of terrorism across this world, wreaking havoc, wanting to wreak havoc on everyone. The truth of the matter is, and there's no other way to put this, is Iran wants America wiped off the face of the earth. It will solve all of their issues, because then they'll be able to reign free as terrorists. They'll be able to get their nuclear weapons that we've paid for, that we let them get, right, under the Obama administration, now the Biden administration going so lackadaisy on everything. What role are they playing on this? But they've got to be a little nervous, because just this week, the IRGC banned all communications devices on their people, because the Israelis launched, I think, one of the most coordinated strategic attacks I've seen, I think, maybe in my lifetime. I've only been around for a little bit, but maybe in my lifetime, with the explosion of all the beepers and then the next day walkie-talkies. What role does Iran play in all this? We obviously know they're proxies, but how big is their role?
Well, it's significant, and the what you're referring to is what we call an information operation. It's traditional. Believe it or not, it's really traditional. We've been looking at this since the 90s. but the scope and precision of the attack was something significant by the Israelis. It's weaponized technology, and anyone with a bunch of bright folks can figure out how technology works. Technology is ambivalent to the user, so it's not good or bad. It just is. And the Israelis figured out the vulnerabilities and use those vulnerabilities. Well, that's what the Iranians are now afraid of. Yeah. The Iranians now recognize that, gee, they don't live in a vacuum. They use Western technology like every other major country, and now they're scared. And oh, by the way, the use of technology started before the Beeper attack. There was an attack. There was a murder of the Hamas leader in Tehran, incidental to the inauguration of the new president a couple months ago. Well, that was done apparently with a computer. So everybody's on edge right now about, gee, is that phone going to blow up if you talk into it? And I think it's a good thing that they're putting that kind of terror, if I can use that word, in the hearts of those individuals who are terrorists.
Right. I've been saying this on the show often. For anyone who's seen the movie Law Abiding Citizen with Gerard Butler, he sits in a prison cell and blows up everything from a prison cell. And it's sort of like we're living in a movie right now with what's going on. I mean, I wake up in the morning and I read my 3-4 hours of news, go through the Daily Mail, the New York Post, Breitbart, the Gateway Post, and all, these different, and after one story after the next, it's like, what the hell? Just when you think it can't get any crazier, it does. Speaking of crazy, Zelensky, the greatest fundraiser or swindler, if you want to call him that, of all time, also in America this week, flown over on an American C-17, costing taxpayers, I don't know, you put the estimate of over $1 million to fly him over $1 million to fly him over here, bringing up a very important point, taking that C-17 out of our arsenal of planes overseas. But he's over in America to present us with a victory plan. Now, years later, he finally has a victory plan on how he's going to beat Vladimir Putin. What's taking Zelensky so long?
Well, because it's a bogus plan, because it's like we join NATO and NATO invades. That's the plan. It's crazy. It's like nobody who's a rational human being who understands even a quarter of what necessary strategy is like, no, that's the victory plan. It's like they goad us into war. We are his victory plan. That's the issue. So I'm just saying that's how bad it is. And yeah, look, you could have put him on a little C-12, C-17. C-17s are a limited asset. It's very expensive to run those things because they're hardened, because they're made for combat situations. It's the most expensive plane you could have put him on. It was done for show. And oh, by the way, they sent him to Pennsylvania, where it's a swing state. You have the governor, you have the Biden folks, all there. That was a political commercial that we, the taxpayer, paid for, and it's unconscionable. Yeah,
I got a better idea, Tony. Instead of sending him, why don't we send him? I would have been okay with America paying for his first, what we even call it first class plane ticket on American Airlines or something like that. I mean, you got 300 something people on that plane. I think you'd probably be pretty safe if we flew him out of somewhere in Europe over to America. Right. But no, it had to be showboated. It had to be put on a C-17, like you said, a campaign event. But not only did he come over here and parade and gallivant and do all the stuff he does, but he's actually attacking J.D. Vance. I think calling him extreme. President Trump was in a grocery store the other day and handed a lady $100 for groceries, and I see people.
He does that stuff,
all the time. I mean, I know a guy who used to work on a side story at LaGuardia Airport before President Trump became president, when he parked his plane there. And my buddy used to fuel up his plane and do all that stuff over at Shelter at LaGuardia. And he said every single time Trump came in, Trump would meet every single person who was on the ground crew. Go into his pocket, pull out $100. Everyone got $100. Everyone got $100. I've seen it with my own eyes. Him tipping him. So it's not out of the ordinary for President Trump. And they're saying, oh, that's an FEC violation. You can't pay for voters. Well, what is Joe Biden doing with his student loan forgiveness?
Exactly.
What are you doing with bringing Zelensky over here to bash J.D. Vance? I mean, how do the Democrats get away with this stuff, Tony?
Well, it's because first off, they don't understand the idea of just being nice. There's another story. I was the Trump 2020 National Security Advisor, and I was prohibited from telling a story about when he and Hillary were at the 9/11 Museum. And basically, Hillary was there for like 10 minutes and felt, the Scooby van. You saw them sticking her in a Scooby van. He was there for an hour and a half. He walked around. At the end of his tour, he got his checkbook out and wrote $1 million to the museum. Said, "Don't tell anybody. So I'm just telling the story because I think I'm sorry if it, but Trump does that. It's just him. And so the idea here that he can't be a nice guy is stupid. And at the same time, you have people who literally should be, it was a massive violation of the federal election campaign process, as well as the Hatch Act. And yet nothing's going to happen because unless Trump gets in, which I would hope he would do something, but the Democrats never hold themselves accountable. It's not possible.
I'd asked somebody this question the other day. Do you think we're going to see at some point Zelensky get on a plane at the end of this war with his, we don't know how much money he really has that he's gotten from this whole organization. But do you think we're going to see Zelensky get on a plane at one point in this war and never hear from him again?
Oh, sooner than later. Yeah. Look, despite what everybody keeps saying about the Ukraine winning, they're not. They're surrounded in Kursk. That Kursk pocket is another place they're losing badly, and everybody says they're winning. They're not. The Donbass is about to fall because of the troops they took out of the Donbass to do Kursk. The Russians are gaining ground. Look, I think by the only reason we're not hearing about this is because the mainstream media is hiding what's actually going on. So this is like a Hail Mary. Him coming here and pretending everything's good is a Hail Mary, trying to get Harris back in there to keep that gravy train going. Because again, he's calling Vance an extremist because Vance is going to push the idea of a peaceful end, well, a negotiated end of the war, and that's what Zelensky does not want because the gravy train stops if that's the case.
Tony, I want to take one more quick break here. When we come back,
Sure.
I want to talk about these endless wars.
Sure.
You were very critical during the times of 9/11, coming out and speaking out. And of course, we're rebuffed by the deep state. Speaking of the deep state, 700 deep state members are backing Kamala Harris. Most of those 51 intel chiefs who said the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. Yep. We're going to take a quick break here. We're coming back with Tony Shaffer. Stay with us.
When I started MyPillow, it was just a problem solution, one product company. Well, since then, with the help of my dedicated employees, we now have hundreds of products, some you might not even know about. To get the word out, we're having a $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-use MyPillows, $25. MyPillow sandals, $25. And for the first time ever, our 6-pack towel sets, you guessed it, just $25. Our brand new 4-pack dish towels, $25. And I've never done this before. Premium MyPillows with all new Giza fabric, any size, any loft level, even king size for only $25. And there's so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code for our $25 extravaganza. Order $75 and over. Your entire order ships absolutely free.
We're back. We're talking with Tony Shaffer. Tony, I said before we went to break there, you played a big role in 9/11. You were in the military around that time. You've taken issue with some things that happened in 9/11. Before we started the show, I told you my father's brother, my uncle, passed away this week from 9/11 related injuries. Right. Had gotten a brain tumor. Was on the ground 9/11 day one. Spent every single day thereafter at the dump, sifting through, trying to find remains of people who lost their lives on that day. Now 23 years later, Tony, we still don't know a lot of really what went on that day, what led up to it. What we do know is that we invaded Iraq after that for weapons that we now know, or probably knew back then, didn't really exist. You were crucial in a moment, and you got a lot of blowback from it for an operation called Able Danger. Can you tell the audience what you knew back then and what you tried to bring to light that they rebuffed you and came after you personally for?
Yeah. So you mentioned the Israeli op against Iran. Well, we were looking at doing similar things to Al Qaeda. Able Danger was an operation to map, be prepared to kill Al Qaeda. That's it. It was created by General Hugh Shelton, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. It was given to General Pete Schoonmaker, the commander of Special Operations Command, and a bunch of us whiz kids, and I was a lot younger back then, were told to figure out a way to globally map Al Qaeda and then be ready to go kill it. That's it. It was a special, what again to do to Al Qaeda what the Iranians did to Hezbollah, just like that. I mean, just many of the same concepts.
Right.
And so that was what was controversial. It started in 1999. 2 years before 9/11. And then we were doing it outside. It's a black operation. Nobody we knew we were doing it. And so I've been told that when I came forward and told the 9/11 Commission, Phil Zelikow, the staff director, when I was undercover in Afghanistan in 2003, they were shocked because they had not been told of it. And so the next thing you know, I'm being a whistleblower inadvertently, talking about the fact that, yeah, we mapped out Al Qaeda before 9/11, and we were prepared to kill them. And that became the controversy, how much information we actually did have. And if you remember, the government knew a great deal about the 9/11 hijackers within 24 hours. They had all the information. Mm-hmm. And so does people ever wonder how they did that? Well, the answer is because we knew about these guys. And that's become a controversial point too. Well, how did we know? And why did we know? Well, we knew because we were studying these guys. And at least in our case, we had concepts to use specific special mission units to go literally kill them. And that's what's controversial, is why in January of 2001, after briefing Hugh Shelton, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the Bush administration said, yeah, never mind, we're not going to do anything. That's a big issue. It's not been resolved.
And if I'm not wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had mapped out that there were some of these people in America already at that time. Is
Absolutely.
that correct?
So, yeah. So we actually were told, because they were here legally, which we disputed, a Navy lawyer was told to tell us we can't look at them. So we had to put stickies over the faces of those we had confirmed who were here. We identified 2 of the 3 cells of the 9/11 attack in our run. And we were told, you can't look at that. Now think about that. Who does that? Well, we were fighting it, and we kept trying to pass that information to the FBI, because it's like, okay, if we can't look at it, we're going to give it to the FBI because they should know. We were stopped by lawyers. Lawyers stopped the meetings every time. Louis Freeh, the director of the FBI before Mueller, which I would argue that Freeh was an honest guy, Mueller was not.
Right.
Mueller actually stopped the FBI from testifying to the information I just provided you. Freeh said, had he gotten the Able Danger information, he said this in a Wall Street Journal editorial of November 2005. He said if he had gotten the information, he could have stopped the 9/11 attacks. He said that, not me.
Why wouldn't the U.S. government want to? I mean,
well,
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, Tony, but and I say this on every single show that I talk about this with people. Since 2015, I think before 2015, a lot of us trusted the government, right? Yep. 2015 is when they spied on President Trump's campaign. Yep. Now you fast forward, they went after him his whole entire administration. Now you go deeper into it and you go to this whole COVID thing where the government told us we had to stand 6 feet. We now find out that Fauci just took out a rule. It seems like a good distance for me. So nobody was questioning this before, and there's only people like you and I and other people who are independent journalists who want answers. You can't talk about this on Fox News. You can't talk about it on mainstream media because
I got in trouble kind of hitting at stuff on Fox.
Right, because everyone's worried about sponsors and advertising. Well, guess what? Let them go to hell. Because you know what? It's more important to get the truth out, Tony, than putting a few extra dollars in your pocket for the American people. And what about those 3,000 people? I'm from New York, Tony. I lost, like I said, over the weekend, my uncle.
I'm sorry for your loss. I
appreciate you. But I went to school with kids who came to school the following week who didn't have fathers, right? Who didn't have mothers who were in that building. One of my good friends lost his father, a firefighter on 9/11. What about those 3,000 people? You know, everyone looks at it at a macro scale. There's millions of people here. There's hundreds of millions of Americans. What's 3,000? And I don't think we really started to question what goes on in this country until we saw, we had mentioned before to you, Russ Tice come out and blow the whistle on the Patriot Act, spying on Americans, things like that, spying on President Trump's campaign. Why now, 23 years later, are people still not skeptical of who killed JFK? Why are Americans not waking up to what's going on in this country and what's been going on for the last 23 years? I mean, even before then, dating back to, like I said, who killed JFK?
Yeah. Look, my friend Jerry Corsi did an extraordinarily detailed book on this. It was the government, CIA and others were conspired. And so we have to accept at this point that the history that we've been given is not the history that exists regarding the factual events. And I think it's all about a narrative. And I think we discovered that, especially if you just look at the last 3 years. Somehow we're supposed to believe that the Biden administration is the kindest, gentlest, most wonderful administration, and Kamala Harris is the heir apparent.
Yeah.
We all know the prices are high, the economy is horrible. The Biden administration has created wars. It's all something that we have to recognize that we're not being told the truth. And I think it goes back to at least Kennedy, maybe before that. It could go back to Roswell, as far as I'm concerned, 1947. But we have to recognize that the seeking of truth is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And oh, by the way, apparently Hillary Clinton thinks that we shouldn't be permitted to do that because apparently, we might look or say something out there in the public that she doesn't like and we should be put in jail. That's who they are. They're like that. That's the deep state.
Well, speaking of, I mean, Seth Rich was a big topic many years ago. DNC staffer who was assassinated,
Right.
shot in the back of his head. Lou spoke about it on Fox News. Sean Hannity spoke about it on Fox News. They got sued by the family, and all they wanted was answers. Tony, they
Right.
they put out what's being reported, and it doesn't take a detective or a brain surgeon to realize when someone gets shot in the middle of a park in the middle of the night and something as small as his cheap wristwatch or $1 missing from his pocket was not missing, and then you have all these things surrounding him. A really good lawyer, Ty Clevenger, has FOIA'd the FBI for Seth.
I know Ty. I've talked to him. Yeah, I know.
Ty's a great guy. Ty's my attorney.
Yeah.
A really good guy. And, FOIA's the FBI. The FBI says they're in possession of this laptop. Judge says, turn over that laptop to Ty. FBI says, we can't right now. Well, the judge says, well, turn it over. Still now, I think it's going on over a year. They still haven't turned over the laptop. They've confirmed they have the laptop. Then they say they don't have the laptop, but they have the contents of the laptop. Well, where is the laptop? Ty has said to me many times after Seth was killed, his brother flew in from, I think, somewhere out in the Midwest, took the laptop and flew it back out with him. I mean, there's things like that just don't make sense. And you have a family who is more worried about getting money from Fox News than worrying about who killed their son. Now, I don't know if that's on them or if that's on someone who's in their ear saying, you better do this or this is going to happen to you. I'm not going to hold them accountable for it, but it just makes you wonder. We now have, Tony, 700, speaking of the deep state, 741 former Intel members, deep staters, we'll call them. Among them, Alex Vindman, the famous Ukraine whistleblower who was on the phone call with President Trump. The perfect phone call where they say, he pressured Zelensky into doing this or that. Zelensky coming out saying that's not true. He did not do that. Whatever. He wound up getting impeached over it. Just added on the list of, I call them medals because they're medals for President Trump. It means that he's doing something right that they went after him. Right. But now we have 741 deep state members backing Harris. She went out there parading. She's got all these former Republicans, Adam Kinzinger. I hate to break it to her, but I don't think the devil would want Dick Cheney's endorsement, Tony.
Go
ahead.
No, the first point is he was literally their devil until now. It's like all of a sudden, no, he's good.
He's a war criminal, which he is.
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah. So now it's like, oh, no, he's ours now, so it's fine. It just shows who they are. They have no moral center. And I'll just say this and be clear. I'm a Reagan Republican. I hate neocons. Farewell, neocons. You're welcome to go. Go with Satan, which is probably your choice, just saying. But the loss of Liz Cheney, the loss of Dick Cheney, just go. And then Vindman was always a criminal. That guy, he basically he was part of the Eric Chickamauga thing or whatever that guy's Caramella, whatever that guy. Yep. That Chickarella. And then so that's good. And then I know some of these people personally. I know Martha Duncan. I'm ashamed of knowing her. Clapper. Jim Clapper. Jim Clapper makes chimpanzees look smart because that guy is a political animal, and so they are literally connective tissue who have probably been a drain on our resources, and they, like you said, they've shown who they are. They're part of the deep state.
I can't think of the NGO, but there was an NGO Lou had me look into one day, and he said, I want you to look into this. And Lou was always, most journalists are at 10,000 feet. Lou was at 30,000 feet 100% of the time. He was always ahead of the curve on everybody for everything. And he had me look into this organization. Now it's slipping my mind. It was about a year ago. And he said, I want you to look into this, and I want you to see how many of these intel chiefs sit on this board. And Tony, it was a ridiculous amount. And it's,
I'm sure.
And it's such a simple thing for journalists to go ahead and do. And You put the puzzle pieces together. That's what we do as journalists, Tony. We don't just take people's word for it. We take the information, we dissect it, we figure out what's real, what's not. But then you got John Brennan and Michael Hayden out there on CNN and MSNBC. These guys still have, to the best of my knowledge, still have security clearances. I love President Trump to death. I think everything he did, in 99% of what he did in his first term, was the greatest thing this country's ever seen. The 1% issue I have with President Trump is that he didn't hold enough of these people. And we were talking before this.
I've had this conversation with the senior staff.
His problem is, and people who don't know President Trump don't realize this, he's too nice of a guy, Tony. After 2016, he could have went after Hillary Clinton. And you know what? He took the high road, and it's backfired on him now because they're coming after him. But he took the high road and said, you know what, let's just move on as a country. Let's heal. It was a very divisive 2016 election. Let's move on. Let's move forward. But these people are criminals. John Brennan, the Michael Haydens of the world, they're criminals, Tony. They still have their security clearances. Do you think we'll see in a second Trump administration, hopefully come November 5th or a week after or 2 weeks after or 3 weeks after when we finally get our president-elect, he'll right those wrongs and go after these people?
The answer is I hope so. I spoke with President Trump in about 2 months ago at the Chesapeake, Virginia event. And I don't want to go into what we spoke about, but it's along the lines of what we're talking about. It's like, what do we do to actually go through and actually stop this nonsense? Because these people are a cancer. They will not go away. They're part of the permanent bureaucracy or deep state. And I think he's learned his lesson. People like Rance Priebus, people like H.R. McMaster, John Bolton, they were all part of that permanent class that were never going to go along, and they pretended because they wanted to be inside to have authority.
John Kelly.
I think John Kelly. Look, John Kelly turned out to be a huge disappointment. John once told me, because I recognized in 2017 the Russia collusion narrative was false, and so I went to John. I said, look, I need to sit down with President Trump to get the Army to do a peer review, Army counterintelligence do a peer review of FBI's foreign counterintelligence programs. Because we knew that it was corrupt, but we could do a review.
Right.
And the Pentagon said, yeah, we'll do it, but you've got to have the president tell us to do it. And so I went to John Kelly, chief of staff, and I said, John, I need to talk to the president about this. And John Kelly looked at me and I says, Tony, I will never let you see the president because all you're going to do is inflame his instincts. Yeah. All you're going to do is inflame his instincts.
The reason I do think he's going to right that wrong is because a name we left out was Nikki Haley. I mean, a total war hawk. And he's completely distanced himself from her. He didn't want her anywhere near him after the campaign, didn't care for her endorsement. President Trump, there's no doubt he loves endorsements, but I think he'd rather have an endorsement from a Democrat like we saw this mayor of that Muslim city in America endorsing President Trump because of all the right he did than Nikki Haley. I don't think he gives a damn. So I think we are seeing a turn. But then when you hear the guys like maybe Kevin McCarthy being floated as the chief of staff, and the hair on the back of my neck stands up. I'm like, here we go again. It's starting all over again. He's not even back in the White House. The other issue that we had it came to arise when the whole issue with John McCain and President Trump happened. There's got to be a distinction, and it was the same thing with John Kelly when Trump fired John Kelly. Well, he was a military veteran. He did this for the country. You have to dissect the difference between a military career, Tony, and a political career. Once you're in the military, you do what you're a hero for doing what you did. But once you get into politics, that's it. I mean, that doesn't forgive you for every single thing you did. It doesn't give you the right to go be a war hawk and send our troops overseas and send our kids overseas to fight endless wars.
Yeah. Well, no, I know John McCain, and John was a neocon, and he was very dangerous. I had to go with Bud McFarlane to Egypt on a delegation to look at and assess al-Sisi and what was going on there. And I had a copy of my report, and in the process of meeting with John to brief him on my report, he didn't like it and threw it at me because I was going, no, I'm not joking. That was John McCain. If you said something, it was factually based, and because I was supporting the idea of al-Sisi needed to move forward with the way he wanted to do. He's not our guy. No, the Muslim Brotherhood's not good guys, John. Don't go with the Muslim Brotherhood. And that was the big issue, is that he was a supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood, which was stupid. But anyway, I digress. I'm just saying, people like John McCain were part of the problem, and And the idea that Trump called him out for being part of the problem was somehow anti-patriotic was insane. It was completely insane. So.
Yep, it's unbelievable. I want to wrap up with this. Trump assassination attempt number 2. We know everything about this guy. Over the weekend, his son was arrested in North Carolina for allegedly possessing child pornography. It seems to be like the thing these days, these total weirdos. It always relates back to children. And it's terribly sad. But we know everything about this guy. We know, his whereabouts, what was in his car, what was in his possession, everything to his cell phone data. But the first assassination attempt, which they shot the victim, the attempted shooter, Crooks, and cremated his body right away. We know nothing about him. Do you think there's something deeper to that of why we know so much about the second shooter? They're overproducing evidence on this man, but the first one, we know absolutely nothing about. Haven't heard anything from his parents. Granted, they're all lawyered up now, but do you think it's weird?
Yeah. So first off, they released the crime scene within days. Like you never release a crime scene. You never, cremate a body that has actual questions about his state of mind where drugs may have been involved, especially since there's evidence he may have been on a psychotropic drug of some sort. Okay. Yeah. Well, you can't get samples now, can you? So it's things like that which are completely inappropriate and I would say illegal, and it's not part of the process. So it's typical of those when they want to get rid of something, they did. And oh, by the way, it's interesting that they had the crime scene. They had people up there with Crooks. Like, look at he split. Well, why is that? Because I think they were trying to destroy evidence. That's why. I'm just saying.
Well, why would they want to destroy evidence, Tony?
Because I don't think he was a shooter, or at least he wasn't the only shooter. I think they had to modify things to change the situation to the story they wanted to tell. That's why. And this goes back to seeing things over and over where they come up and they do things which are out of the ordinary or peculiar. So people need to sit down and understand that any process which actually had transparency, we know everything by now. Well, we don't because they don't want us to. So we have to question what's going on.
Imagine that. We have to question who's trying to kill the leading presidential candidate and, probably next president of the United States. And it's sort of become like a normal thing in this country. Oh, guess what? Trump was almost assassinated once again. And I speak to Russ Tice often on the show, former NSA senior intel analyst and whistleblower. And every time I bring him on, and he had said this was going to happen 2 years ago. He said they were going to try and kill President Trump. And that's how he first got in contact with Lou. He said, you need to let President Trump know that they're coming for him. This was 2 years ago. Yep. I had Russ on after the first attempt and unfazed by it. And I said, I understand, Russ, you've seen a lot of crazy things in your life, working in the deep state of the U.S. government, knowing what goes on. Probably, I don't know, this is unconfirmed. He's never told me this, but probably taking part in assassination attempts himself on behalf of the NSA. Now we have a second one. I bring him back on the show. He's unfazed by it again. And he goes, yeah, this is just the second one. And the third one's probably coming. This one might be a little bit more.
I think the third one's coming too. I do.
Right. And he says, this may be his airplane. This may be his motorcade. And President Trump still, it seems, unfazed by it too. But I think this is a real threat we have to worry about because, like you said, I don't think these are lone actors. I don't think they're, even people working with friends. I think they're working with a higher power. And it could end catastrophically for President Trump. I hope to God that I'm wrong, but this is the new reality of what we're in. Do you agree?
Yep.
Yeah, it's truly sad. Tony, where can people follow you? Where can they follow your podcast and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so truthwithtony.com is my Hard Truth with Tony Shaffer. We're on the America Out Loud network on weekends, on radio, on you can see it on Apple and iTunes as well. And then Project Sentinel, projectsentinel.com. And of course on Twitter X, I'm out there as T Spooky. Anyway, thanks for having me. It's been a great conversation. I look forward to talking to you again soon.
I appreciate it, Tony. And thanks for all you're doing. And thanks for, for trying to get the word out and alerting President Trump to all these outside threats that we face as a nation. He faces as a person. Appreciate you, Tony.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for being with us today. And a reminder, due to the high demand of all you listeners who signed up to switchwithjohn.com, I now need a few of you to join my team and help out with this project. If you're looking for remote work or an additional stream of income for that matter, join me on a Zoom call this Friday to learn about it all. Friday, September 27th at 7 p.m., we're going to host this Zoom to see if this project may be right for you. The basic qualifications are that you be at least 18 years of age, and you're decent with technology. You're good with the computer. You can register at patriotsdirect.com. That's patriots with an S, direct.com. Every dollar isn't going as far as it used to, so I'm praying this is an answer to some of your prayers. Come find out this Friday, September 27th, and register at patriotsdirect.com. I will be there as well, so I look forward to seeing all of you. Please be sure to join us back here tomorrow for the Great America Show as our quest for truth, justice, and the American way continues. And please be sure to follow me on Twitter at John Fawcett NY. That's John Fawcett NY. And on Truth Social at John Fawcett. Shoot me a tweet. Let me know what you want to hear more of on the show. You could also email us at info@loudobbs.com. We'll see you back here tomorrow. May God bless you. May God bless America. And may God bless the great Lou Dobbs.